Rahimahullah radiallahu anhu nafa'ana bihi wa bikum. He says, فَصْلٌ وَعَلَيْكَ بِالْأَمْرِ بِالْمَعْرُوفِ وَالنَّهِي عَنِ الْمُنْكَرِ فَإِنَّهُ الْقُطُبُ الَّذِي عَلَيْهِ مَدَارُ الْأَمْرُ الدِّينِ وَلِأَجْلِهِ أَنْزَلَ اللَّهُ الْكُتُبَ وَأَرْسَلَ الْمُرْسَلِينَ وَقَدْ انْعَقَدَ عَلَى وَجْهِهِ إِجْمَاعَ الْمُسْلِمِينَ وتظاهرت نصوص الكتاب والسنة على الأمر به والتحذير من تركه وقال الله تعالى ولتكن منكم أمة يدعون إلى الخير ويأمرون بالمعروف وينهون عن المنكر وأولئك هم المفلحون.
You must enjoin good and forbid evil, for this is the pivot around which religion revolves, and is the reason why God revealed His books and sent His messengers. It is considered a duty by the consensus of all Muslims, and a great many passages in the book and Sunnah enjoin it and warn about its neglect. God the Exalted had said, "Let there be from among you a nation who invite to goodness, enjoin beneficent acts, and forbid reprehensible ones. Such are they who are successful."
Alright, so go back to what the Imam is saying. Imam al-Haddad, rahimahullah subhanahu wa ta'ala, nafa'ana bihi wa bikum. He says that the enjoining of good, the amr is in a sense the ordering, but the ordering doesn't come in the shape or the characteristic of forcing, unless one is of that stature. In other words, unless you're the head of a household, the head of an organization, you're the amir of a group, the president, the prime minister, whatever it might be. In that situation, that individual would be obliged fardiyan, as an obligation from Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala to do that. For us it comes in different forms, and we'll talk about that. The hadith of the Prophet ﷺ that we did mention, and we'll mention it again. Imam mentions it in a little bit, inshallah azza wa jal. And وَالنَّهِي عَنِ الْمُنْكَرِ, and also the nahi, it's also, it doesn't come in that sense that anytime you see something bad, you're obliged to automatically change it, unless you have the authority. You've been given tawalla or muwalli ala al-amr, unless that you have been assigned the authority by the people, and that's generally how it works when it comes to authority, that someone is assigned, or mulkun adul, as the Prophet ﷺ said, that it ends up becoming a monarchy, the Khalifa, from time to time, as it was up until al-Hamid II. Rahimahullah ta'ala. So it comes in different forms and different ways, and we'll talk about that as we go into the chapter and we delve in. It's إنه القطب الذي عليه مدار الدين مدار الأمر الدين. So he's saying that the qutub, he says it's the pivot. It's not just the pivot, but it's the pinnacle. It's we could say essence, but it's not really the right word. But the deen, nucleus, yeah, but the qutub is also the highest aspect of it. So it has that meaning, the nucleus of it, but it's also the highest aspect of it, whereby the amr of the deen, the affairs of the deen of Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala and the Prophet of Allah alayhi salatu wasalam, sallallahu ala rasulillah, revolve. The deen revolves around that. And that makes sense. As he says, وَلِأَجْلِهِ, and it's for that reason that Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala revealed the books. وَأَرْسَلْ, and He sent out the messengers. Otherwise, what's the point? Okay? This is put your pens down, stop typing, whatever it is going on in your minds, right? So, this is where we have to understand that what Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala is talking about, in particular what the Imam is talking about in regards to what Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala says and the Prophet of Allah they say, is that what is the point of Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala revealing a book or sending a prophet if it stays with that prophet? Mursil, messenger more correctly is the right word rather than prophet. What is the point of Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala revealing a book to the Lawh al-Mahfuz, and from the Lawh al-Mahfuz to Sayyidina Jibreel Amin al-Wahy alayhi salam, to whichever messenger it was, and then it stays with the messenger? What's happened in that scenario? Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala, He was a kanz, treasure as we say in English. It was something valuable, Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala, and was unknown. So Allah Azza wa Jal created the creation to be known. That's the Hadith Qudsi. Okay, Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala created the creation to be known, to be glorified subhanahu wa ta'ala. So His majesty could be recognized and realized by those whom He created, subhanahu wa ta'ala. So what is the point? That's why it's the, maybe is the point is the word, the point of the deen, kutub ad-deen. The point of the deen. Right? The pinnacle in that sense of the deen, if you look at it in terms of a pyramid, it all gets back to that point. The point of enjoining good and forbidding evil in its different forms. And its different forms. And we have to always remember that in its different forms. Okay? And so that's why Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala sent the books. For that to happen. إِنِّي جَاعِلٌ فِي الْأَرْضِ خَلِيفَةً. I have sent, or I'm going to send to earth, a vicegerent, an agent, a representative, somebody to do my bidding. Someone to take care of what Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala, ma'ruf. Okay? And the ma'ruf is defined lughawiyan, even in the lugha, about ما أمر به الشرع واستحسنه العقل. This is very, subhanallah, when it comes to us understanding the deen of Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala and a replication of that in the laws that are around us today, they're so identical, they're so similar, okay? That which, the shara, which is what Allah ordained, there's an obligation to do. That's what ma'ruf is. And وَاسْتَحْسَنَهُ الْعَقْلُ السَّلِيمُ. And the sound mind, in other words, a mind that's not corrupted, a mind that's not overtaken by desire, a mind that's not overtaken when Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala by I suppose by consumerism in a sense, by materialism, that put consumerism on the side, by materialism, by delving into the affairs and the luxuries of life, a life that's not corrupted by overstating one's own significance in life and in the scheme of the universe. And mustahsan, and it's good. It's accepted by the Aql Salim. And when we look at the Universal Declaration of Human Rights and the United Nations Charter, when it talks about freedom of religion, what does it say? Yeah, everyone's free to have their religion within the limits of acceptable ethics. Ma'ruf. Within the limits of acceptable ethics. So that's another example of things that we come across in what they call al-ahkam al-wad'iyyah. The rulings that are placed on the earth by human beings. That are the same as exactly the same as the Sharia, with the myriad of other rulings there are. And we'll try and refer back to them as we go along throughout the book of Imam al-Haddad's book of assistance, inshaAllah. So we get an understanding, a greater understanding of the world around us and how we as Muslims should approach that world. How we as Muslims should connect to the book of Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala and be accepting, inshaAllah, of the world that's around us, inshaAllah. So that we can deal with that world. So we don't live in a bubble. So we don't live in our own world, within our minds, or as we believe it to be in our deens. That's a disaster. That's a disaster for us to do that. And when we see examples of that around us all the time. Okay? And munkar. So if we look at ma'ruf in its essence, shar'an, it's tawheed, it's الاستسلام أو الإقرار بوجود الله سبحانه وتعالى, the acceptance or the submission to the fact that Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala exists. It's and اتباع سيدنا رسول الله صلى الله عليه وسلم. And it's in the Shari perspective, right? That's all and everything that goes along with it, all the good that goes along with it. Okay, and al-munkar is the opposite of that. It's manha anhu shara. The shara says no, stay away from that. That's no good for you. That's the essence of it. Even though you might think that it's good for us. And look, here's the example in our foods. Since the 60s, and that's why I always talk about the food and organic and fair trade and being healthy, because that wasn't an issue before the 60s. We weren't overnourished as, the top 10% of the world. The rest of the world, some of them still face that issue. But what? We thought that fast food, extra supply of food, pesticides, herbicides, genetic engineering, GMOs, we're going to actually make more food and make us happier if we're going to give husn al-dhan in that regard as to why it was done. Alright? And then what's happening now? We're the fattest we've ever been. We're the most unhealthy we've ever been. We're the most unproductive we've ever been. And we're the most lost that we've ever been, in my view, and that's just a personal view, in terms of we can't tell where the truth is. It's too difficult to tell where the truth is. So what Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala has made as ma'roof is for our own benefit, not for Him subhanahu wa ta'ala. Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala, the whole world's not even worth the wing of a gnat to Him. The whole world is not even worth the creation. It's not worth. Allah can create more and do whatever He wants subhanahu wa ta'ala. It's not worth, but it's for our own purpose. And when we reject that, we're the ones who suffer. We're the ones, who become perturbed. We're the ones who become anxious. We're the ones who become depressed, and worse than that, we become lost as a people. So, it's the opposite of that. And that which the aql salim, which the sound mind rejects. It can't accept it. In other words, if you want to say sound mind, common sense maybe we might say. We could possibly. Aql salim. Common sense. It's common sense that this is no good. It's common sense that that's no good. So people reject it. They can't accept it. Okay? So that is on the first and foremost of munkar is kufr. Shirk. At-takdhib bi kitabillah. At-takdhib bi rasulillah. Rejecting and saying that they don't exist or wasn't true, the Risala of the Prophet of Allah ﷺ, the book of Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala. Okay? So that's the essence of ma'roof and the essence of munkar. So they're the things we have to keep in mind to understand the meaning of what the Imam is saying. This is the qutub of the deen. This is what the deen revolves around. This is how one deals with Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala and their own selves in terms of the aql salim.
Can you repeat the Arabic meaning again for munkar?
ما نهى عنه الشرع واستقبحه على العقل. واستقبحه على العقل. استقباح يعني قبيح. Repulsive, yeah. Rejects it. Al-aql salim, don't forget, it's al-aql salim. Not just any brain, not just anyone, but it's got to be a sound mind. Like we said, a mind that hasn't been corrupted, first and foremost with its own shahawat, with its own desires, with its own seeking for luxury and as we said, connection to the world, the terrestrial world, the world in which we live in. Because if a person is connected to this world, then their mind can't really be elevated. We don't want to say the word isn't connected, but overcome is more the correct word. Overcome by the affairs of life, overcome by their own significance in regards to the circle of life and the cycle of life and the way things are in the cosmos and the universe. So they've given themselves, in other words, they're seeking power, they're seeking position, they're seeking fame, they're seeking these types of things. Unfortunately, a person who does that, their mind isn't sane, unfortunately, and the examples are out there. No.
When you're saying like seeking status, is that just in a worldly sense? Because like for example, if we want to increase status with Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala, that's different?
Totally different. We should always be seeking al-uliya with Allah, or al-alu, or the higher stations with Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala. We shouldn't be at-tama' billah wa at-tama' bima 'indillah. We should always be extraordinarily greedy and covetous of what's with Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala. But no, of course, that's what we're saying. What's tied to this earthly realm? It's what tied to this earthly realm. Because in essence, even the intellect is between, so to speak, the celestial realm and terrestrial realm. It's between the two of them. The body tied to the earth. Nothing you can really do about it. Not much. You do discipline it to some extent, but in essence, it's limited in that regard. We have to eat, we have to drink, we have to sleep. That's the sunnah. Whoever goes against it is not from him, alayhi salatu wasalam, from the hadith that we've heard over and over and over. The spirit is unlimited in a sense to where it can go. Right? In a sense, it's unlimited. It can go to the arsh of Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala. And, that's if someone has that connection to the Prophet of Allah sallallahu, like he went in the Isra' wal Mi'raj, Sidrat al-Muntaha, to those elements. Where exactly, there's a lot of difference of opinion about where the scholars say, but to an extraordinarily higher status. And if one is with the Prophet of Allah sallallahu, spiritually, mentally, physically, then the limit is only placed upon where the Prophet of Allah is going to take the person. But intellectually, the mind, as it might be, is between the two. The mind has to comprehend the world in which it lives, the body. Otherwise, what? Won't sleep, it's going to get sick. Won't eat, it's going to get weak. all these different things that go on with regards to being in tune with the world. And if one's mind isn't in tune with the world and understanding what the world is, then one can't apply the nahi, the ma'ruf and the munkar. One doesn't understand it if that's the case. And at the same time, the mind has the capacity to comprehend, yes, well, look, that's what's with Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala. And to know Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala through the knowledge that's come to us through revelation, and the knowledge that we see through the Qur'an al-Mastur, Afwan al-Mabsut, the Qur'an that we see around us, which is the ayat of Allah, the creations of Allah. From the most, smallest atoms and particles that are smaller than that, to the cosmos and the universe itself. So the brain, or the intellect more correctly, rather than the brain, because the brain is just that physical thing here that just deals with electrical pulses and chemical reactions, basically. So we're talking about the intellect itself, that thing that it can't be cut open or found, whatever it is. But that intellect, so that's why we're thaqalain. Us and the jinns, we're called the thaqalain, because we can choose between the two. And the brain is the criterion. The brain is the thing that determines for us which way we're going to go. So if that brain isn't salim, if it's not sound, where's it going to head towards?
Okay.
Right? The dunyawi. This terrestrial realm. It's going to just become overwhelmed in it. Unfortunately, it's not salim. Right? And if the brain, on the other side of it, the majadib, they're the other side of it. Right? They're people that are so with Allah, they're not really connected with this world. Unfortunately, they have a different ruling, but not a ruling for the aqd salim for us. It's not something that we worry about. Okay, so these people that are overtaken with spirituality, right? They're majadib, the term for them is amongst al-tasawwuf, that they're not really that connected with this earth. They're just they're living here, but
spiritual ecstasy,
whatever you want to call it, spiritual ecstasy.
Ecstatic states.
Yeah, they're not really connected with the earth that much. They forget to eat. They, like one of them we used to see used to come, he used to pass wind when he was praying, but he's not with it. He's not with it. He doesn't even realize what's going on. But, when he makes dhikr, he's in a different state. These have got a special ruling about them. But they're not really considered in that sense aql salim. They're in a special situation. So there's nothing wrong with them in that sense because they're with Allah. But they're not the criterion upon which the decisions of the ulama and all these things are made. But just giving them as an example to show the two poles, and that we should be ummatun wasata. Prophet said that we are ummah that is the middle path, whatever you want to call it, however you want to translate wasata, where the median. They say there's the mean in statistics. The mean is the average. We're not average, okay? But we're the median. The median is the middle number. So the balance. So between, hopefully I'm right because I haven't done statistics for many, many years, but between 1 and 10 the median is 5, is it not? Or is that 0 and 10? You guys haven't done statistics for a while, it sounds like as well. For as an example.
Just did mine today, actually.
Yeah, was it median? Is the median 5 between 1 or 0 and 10?
Well, it'd be
With
both.
5.5 is the average, but with median as well, because it's exactly the same.
Okay,
Between 1
bad
and 10.
example, but
Between
1
0 and 10.
because you've got 10 numbers.
between 1 and 10. Okay, so it's the median. It's the what's in the mode, they also call it in a sense as well, which is the mode. Actually, it's not. It's the median. Okay, so it's that part which is perfectly balanced between extremes. There you go. That's the prophetic way. That's the way we should be on. The part that's perfectly balanced between two extremes. We are not an ummah of extremes. Not even extreme spirituality. And we go back to the hadith. The guy stood in the sun. The guy didn't want to get married. The guy wanted to fast and not, not break his fast. The guy didn't want to pray all night. He said, no, I do all those things. I fast, blah, blah. Astaghfirullah, it's the Prophet. He said, I do this and I do that and I do that. He said, whoever doesn't do what I do is not from me. He's showing us, the Prophet, but don't go into these extremes. Don't go into these. And these majadid that I spoke about, they don't plan to, they just end up there, unfortunately. They just can't control themselves and they end up there. Alright? So he says, وَقَدْ انْعَقَدَ عَلَى وُجُوبِ إِجْمَاعِ الْمُسْلِمِينَ وَتَظَاهَرَتْ نُصُوص الْكِتَابِ وَالسُّنَّةِ عَلَى الْأَمْرِ بِهِ وَالتَّحْذِيرِ min tarkihi. So he says that it's ijma'. it's consensus of the scholars, and all the scholars say that it's wajib, it's an obligation to whatever extent is possible by a Muslim to be involved in enjoining good and dissuading evil. And there's a tahdhir, there's a admonition. You watch out. Be careful should you leave, and in particular the ummah leave. It says, وَقَالَ اللَّهُ تَعَالَى وَلْتَكُمْ مِنْكُمْ أُمَّةٌ يَدْعُونَ إِلَى الْخَيْرِ وَيَأْمُرُونَ بِالْمَعْرُوفِ وَيَنْهَوْنَ عَنِ الْمُنْكَرِ وَأُولَٰئِكَ هُمُ الْمُفْلِحُونَ. And we said that there necessarily has to be وَلْتَكُمْ. There necessarily has to be from amongst you an ummah, a ta'ifa, or a jama'ah, a decent group. Like we said, not a small amount of group, an ummah is a lot of people. And in essence, the call is to those who are educated, shari'an. Those who are scholars in that sense. Okay? Those who are scholars in that sense. Or, in the second tier, those who have knowledge, which would be yourselves. Whoever's finished 22 chapters of, or 21 chapters of the Book of Assistance, in this day and age, in this society in which we live, is muta'allim, has some type of knowledge. Okay? Some type of knowledge. And so the difference between the calling of the scholars and the calling of the non-scholars is the scholars call to halal and haram. This is halal, that's haram. Beware of this. The rest of us, we call to that which is ma'ruf and munkar. What's the difference? The difference is that it's better to do that. That's ma'ruf. I heard it's better to do this. This isn't good, that's munkar. Whereas halal, haram is a different story. So that means that if you see someone doing something that isn't the best, rather than saying that's haram, unless it's a clear haram, like drinking alcohol, like, theft. But even theft has its own conditions, so stay away from that. Drinking alcohol, zina, adultery. Even there's scope amongst some of the scholars depending on the circumstance and situation. So that's what I'm saying. The scholars, the things that are clearly shirk, kufr, someone's saying kufr, all these things, there's no doubt saying something bad about the Sahaba, in other words, cursing the Sahaba, cursing Ummahat al-Mu'mineen, cursing our mothers of the believers, saying something in the Qur'an is not true. These types of things that are clear, yes, we can say that's haram. But the other things, because we're not scholars, there's more than one madhab, there's a lot of other things, then we should shy away from those, saying that's haram. So brother or sister, it's better if you don't do this, it's better if you don't do that. My advice to us is, as much as possible, our job is targheeb, not tarheeb. Bashiru, the Prophet of Allah said, وَلَا تُنَفِّرُوا. Send glad tidings. Don't drive the people away. So our job isn't to sit there like the khatib on Jum'ah like today, halal, haram, haram, halal, halal, haram, haram, halal. That's generally what happens in Friday khutbahs. Our job is to fada'il al-a'mal, to get from books like a Targhib wa Tarhib, fada'il al-a'mal al-Kandahlawi, شو اسمه اللهم صل وسلم على سيد محمد, رياض الصالحين, from the Al-Majjar al-Rabih. These books that talk about, if a person prays in Jama'ah, they get 25, 27 times the reward. If a person, the best beloved thing to Allah, subhanallah, bihamdi, subhanallah al-azim. That's our job. To encourage people. That's our job. Okay? That's in particular for Muslims. And for non-Muslims, rather than saying, which is a better example really, rather than saying, you're going to burn in hell if you don't become a Muslim, that's my belief and my aqidah, our aqidah as Muslims is, that if you're not a Muslim, you're going to burn in hell. Okay? Rather than saying that, either, ادعو إلى سبيل ربك بالحكمة أو الموعظة الحسنة وجدلهم بالتي أحسن. So, call to the way of the Lord with wisdom. Really? The theory of evolution. The Big Bang Theory, whatever your expertise might be in. If you're in science, it's that way. If you're in law, it's comparison between the different types of law. If you're in psychology, as we just mentioned, أحب الأعمال إلى الله, the most beloved deed to Allah is a little bit. The psychologist is saying that now. Well, it's been said 1400. Whatever your area is to encourage, to bring people to open. And look, unfortunately or misfortunately or fortunately, today being so open with regards to technology, there are going to be questions from non-Muslims that you're going to have to dispel about terrorism, about, you know, whatever, women in particular was the question about being women oppressed. So you have to make your investigations with reputable authorities in order to deal with those questions that you know are going to come up. There's no doubt if you talk to a non-Muslim, those questions are going to come up. That's just how it is today, because the weight of media attention is on those issues. The weight of pressure on the Muslims is on those things. So you have to understand that by getting reputable and authoritative information from those who have that authority, so you can address those issues. So it's targheeb, encouraging. Don't be this haram, that every time we go to the khutbah, everything's haram. You're turning me off. You're turning me off. Let alone someone who's new in their deen. Last time we went to the khutbah, he goes, oh, the Shaykh was talking about, it's easy to read the whole Qur'an in one day. I was like, wow, man, I wish you had that. And he gave his example, you can finish a juz' in half an hour, and so 15 hours to finish the whole Qur'an in one day. I was like, are you serious? He's like, I would love to. Who wouldn't? Imam Shafi'i did 2 a day. Great. Habibi, you're talking to people that can't even read Arabic. So that's what I'm saying to you. Don't put people in a situation where it's too hard for them to do it. Because what's going to happen, they're going to say, yeah, nice deen, man. Really cool deen you've got there. But it's not for me. It's not for me. I think it was Mu'adh Nafsu, he was reading long surah when he was praying in in Medina, different area of Medina, long in the salat, long surah, and then someone came and said, Ya Rasulullah, he's doing this. He said, Afattan anta ya Mu'adh. Mu'adh, you're making fitna. And he said, what do you mean? He said, why? Read the short surah. Washamsi, waduhaha. All these short, don't put the people under more pressure. The Prophet of Allah, if he was praying and he heard a baby crying, he would make his salat quicker. And he said, why, Ya Rasulullah? He said, because I know the mother's heart is attached to the child, so rahmah. وَمَا أَرْسَلْنَاكَ إِلَّا رَحْمَةً لِلْعَالَمِينَ. Rather than what we see today, and that's all we're going to cover, because we've been going for a fair bit, okay? Rather than Amr ba'aruf, it's an Amr. You have to do this. You have to say La ilaha illallah or we'll kill you. And it's not your La ilaha illallah, it's my La ilaha illallah. If you don't follow my way and the La ilaha illallah I have, I'm going to kill you. I'm going to blow you up. I'm going to run you over with a truck. I'm going to do whatever when a'udhu billah subhanahu wa ta'ala, and I'm going to justify it. And I'm going to justify it. Like when the bombings happened in Medina, the people were all saying, oh, what's going on? And some people were saying, yeah, they deserve it. Then when they were writing it, like posting it in front of everyone for the world to see, amazingly enough, how these people can be like that. Yeah, these people were munafiqeen, the people in Iraq, they're Rafidah, they're kuffar, and what? When did the Prophet... And they claim to be the only ones who are holding the prophetic tradition. They're the only ones who they think they believe are on the sunnah of the Prophet. What? Where did the Prophet ever do that, alayhi salatu wasalam? Where's that in the hadith? Where's that in the Sirah Nabawiyyah? Where's that anywhere to do with the Prophet of Allah, alayhi salatu wasalam? The man came to him in a time of war. As the Prophet was relaxing, and he got the sword, and he pointed at the Prophet and said, who's going to save you from me now? This is the mentality we should have. And the Prophet looked up, he said, Allah! And then the man shook because of the haiba of the Prophet, and when he said Allah, he dropped the sword. The Prophet picked up the sword in a time of war, right? When the man had threatened to kill him. And he said, who's going to save you from me now? He said, oh, look. Let's just be reasonable here. Okay? Let's just be reasonable. So, all right, do you believe, would you say that Allah is one and I am His Prophet? The man said, no. Sure, what would happen today? We'll kill him. And the man said, but I'll go back. And he said, I promise that I'll never fight with any people that are fighting against you. He said, go. What did he say? Go. Alayhi salatu wassalam. And he went back and he said, I've come to you. The man went back to his parents and said, I've come to you from the best of people. Not the worst of people. Not the most scary of people. Not the most horrible of people. Not the most terrible of people. Or terrorful of people. I've come to you from the best of people. And later on, his whole people, they all became Muslim. That's the rahmah that we need to embody in our hearts and in our minds. If we put our minds on track of, I want everyone to become Muslim. That's what? The guy didn't become Muslim in war. Had the Prophet had every right to do whatever he wanted to do to him, but he didn't. He let him go. He let him go. So that is the mercy that we need to embody. If we don't embody that empathy and that sympathy, and then look, in our time it's worse. I mean, look, I would say in the Arabian Peninsula, everyone knew about the Prophet of Allah, because that was the major political movement that was going on was Islam at that time. So, in my view, I don't think it would have been any different. That's me personally. After thinking about it and pondering and reflecting, I think it would have been the same. They would have been this Muhammad, these people, they're terrorists. I don't think it would have been any different. Do you? Okay?
100%.
I don't think so. I think the same media attention that we're getting now, they would have been getting at the same time. But so why I'm raising that point is, why should we act any different? Why should we act any different than he did, ﷺ, when the same thing would have been happening to him? Probably Rome and Persia, and they would have been hearing about what's going on. Oh, there's a big shake-up in the Arabian Peninsula, whatever news that style they had back then. It would have been exactly the same. Exactly the same. No different. But what was his methodology, alayhi salatu wasalam, to overcome those difficulties? It wasn't unf. It wasn't violence. It wasn't death. It wasn't destruction. It was mercy, alayhi salatu wasalam. And that's what has to be embodied in our minds and in our souls if we are to implement al-amr al-ma'ruf, enjoining good and forbidding evil, or dissuading, more correctly, evil. Wa sallallahu ala sayyidina Muhammad wa ala alihi wa sahbihi wa sallam.